You're watching Real Simple News with Cale McCullough on Thursday, July 20th, 2020. In today's top news stories, a black conservative journalist was stabbed by a leftist extremist because he was a Trump supporter, and Facebook uses AI algorithms to suppress free speech before you ever even see it. And I show you proof that Facebook engaged in antitrust when they censored Real Simple News using these algorithms. Real Simple News is an open source news organization that you can contribute to on GitHub. You can go to github.com/Real Simple News/Real Simple News, and you have to click on the issues, and it's issue number 31. You're going to have to click on the closed issues. And if you find any sort of factual errors in this news broadcast, you can comment on to correct them or suggest a correction on the article, or suggest stories for the next episode of Real Simple News based on what you saw in this episode. You can also find Real Simple News at realsimplenews.net, where you can find links to all of the videos. It's a new website, so expect a lot more to come. I am the founder of WikiSpy, a tool to monitor Wikipedia for tampering by hostile agents and political bias. And we are now officially a fact-checking organization that is in competition with Facebook. And in today's top news story, it's from the Daily Mail. Conservative journalist, 25, is stabbed in the back by Portland protester who he accused of following him, and he claims he was targeted because he supports Trump. The video captures shocking moment of Andrew Duncombe, 25, who was knifed in the back while out filming a protest in Portland early Saturday morning. Quote, "I was stabbed for being a conservative journalist," and quote, the videographer says. Duncombe believes that people began following him after they recognized him for his past videos and pro-Trump commentary, which I too also am in fear for my safety, because I helped start the 2016 Portland anti-Trump protest when I was a brainwashed, radicalized liberal, and I had Trump derangement syndrome, and I thought Republicans were racist because I was ignorant of history. And I am actually afraid for my life and my safety at my home. So these people out protesting for equality for black people who are getting so pissed off, and a lot of these people out protesting, causing the riots, have long criminal histories. Some have murdered people. I have more of a right to be safe at my house than you do from police, given the fact that African Americans have a 5 times increase in violent crime compared to white Americans. Black people kill twice as many white people as vice versa. This, given the fact that black people are only 1/6 of the United States, this is a 12-to-1 kill ratio. African Americans kill almost 9,000 black people per year. To put that into perspective, the KKK killed approximately 3,500 people in its entire existence. So the African Americans are killing twice as many people as the KKK did extra per year. They're out here rioting, looting, murdering police officers, burning down government property and private property, trespassing on people's property in such a way that it requires them to protect their homes with guns. And they're doing all this because they hate Donald Trump. They hate Donald Trump supporters. They want to kill Donald Trump supporters because they think Republicans are racist, and they think that they harmed them and they killed some people that they knew and that they stole from them. And this makes them in danger of becoming genocidal killers. The reason why Nazis killed the Jews is because they blamed the Jews for things that other people did. This is the heart of anti-Semitism. Why is it? It is evil. Why it is wrong? Because you're blaming people for stuff that other people did. And this is the exact behavior that the left is engaging in with their hatred, hostility, and violence that they're using against police officers, Donald Trump supporters, and the 1%. This is the same hostility that was given towards the Jews in World War II. Contrary to popular belief, feminism arose out of the women's suffrage movement. Women got their voting rights in Germany in 1918, and one of the first things they did in Europe was they blew up the place and killed massive amounts of people. Because they weren't familiar with politics, they didn't know exactly what they were getting themselves into. This is exactly what the left is doing, because they were not paying attention to politics before Donald Trump. I used to be a news junkie before this, man. Like I was watching news all day long, like for years before this. And then this stuff happened, and I was still radicalized because I hated Israel because of their mistreatment of the Palestinians. I don't know the full story. I don't live there. I don't vote there. I don't pay taxes there. I'm going to let them take care of their things. All I know is that they tried to make one state where they could bring them in. They didn't want to do that, and they were engaging in terrorist behaviors. The left and the Democrats have been engaging in rampant anti-Semitism. They don't understand it because they're in an equality movement, because they think they're justified in everything they do because they're fighting for equality. And that's basically what the Nazis were doing when they were attempting to create a socialist utopia. But there's a problem with the Nazis' strategy is that people won't go along with it voluntarily. And in order to get them to actually do it, you have to kill people. And this is what fundamentally makes Nazism extremely dangerous, is that it's a competition to see who is the most psychotic genocidal maniac. And it started as a democracy. It was going to be a better world. They were going to make a socialist utopia. And then the far left discovered that they had an enemy, common enemy with the fascists. It was the Socialist Democratic Party of Germany, run by the Jews at the time. And Bernie Sanders is a Jew. The parallels are uncanny. So they elected fascists, the equalist. And they said, we're going to have to go to war to take out the capitalists because they're immoral. And this is the same slippery slope that the left is following down. And I, at my house, have to be afraid for my own safety that a BLM Antifa Nazi is going to come into my house, murder me, burn my house down while my family is in here. It's real. That's called terrorism. They're like, oh, well, X% of black people, I forget what exactly it is. They're saying, I think it was like something like a third of black people are reporting being discriminated by white people. And 8% of white people are reporting being discriminated. And they're like, oh, well, there's so many more black people. What per percent? There's so many more. And then when you crunch the numbers, it turns out there's actually twice as many white people getting discriminated against. So yeah, it sounds like this 8% number is like lower than your 1/3. But when you do the math, it's twice as many people. But they've been radicalized and they don't know that. All they think is, you're a white male, I'm wearing a suit, looks like I have money, which I don't. I'm wearing a suit because I'm broke, because I got canceled, and the left won't help me with my open source startup that I'm trying to help bring about this disability assistance technology, memory augmentation, productivity, and ability assistance technology using IMU language. I'm doing absolutely wonderful things for the community. I'm doing it for free. I'm not even charging anyone. And they hate on me. I'm even fighting China. I am not allowed in mainland China. If I go to mainland China, I'm going to jail under the Hong Kong security law because I advocate the Hong Kong people overthrow the dictator Winnie the Pooh and bring democracy to the people of Hong Kong because the people of Asia want democracy. That makes me real anti-fascist, not just some punk leftist out in the streets hating on Donald Trump supporters, acting all tough. Now, oh, I'm all big and tough because I got some black gas mask on and some black stuff. If I got up in their face, they'd cower like a little bitch. Because they aren't big. There's a couple of them that are big that would mess me up, for sure. They'd come stab me in the back. Here, let's watch this video of them stabbing this dude in the back. This is what they're going to try to do to me, bruh. This is why you're going to better believe you try to do this shit to me, you're going to get shot.
Someone's stalking us.
Nobody's sneaking up behind me, motherfucker. You're staying the fuck away from me.
Did you just stab him? Bro, he just stabbed him, dude.
I don't leave my house.
Bro, he just stabbed him.
I sit around and make videos. I program AI. I hang out with my son. I don't harm anybody, man. I fight back. I fight against China. I reveal the Chinese tampering in Wikipedia.
He stabbed him.
I show you the influence the Chinese government has in the Democratic Party. This is what I spend my time doing. But to these people, they just say, oh, I'm far right because I don't support immigration. And I don't believe that these people are doing good. Look at these Black Lives Matter Antifa Nazi scumbags. This is what they do. They're lunatics! They're fucking crazy! Woo! Woo! It's like, you just put that one in a loop, dude. It's Xena social justice warrior going, enemy attack! In this next story from the New York Post, Portland Wall of Mom groups is accused of anti-blackness by other advocates. The group of moms that acted for a buffer from the protests in Portland is being accused of anti-blackness by another advocacy group in the city. Don't Shoot Portland posted a lengthy message on Instagram using people to stop supporting Portland Wall of Moms, a crew of mothers in yellow shirts who stood between protesters and federal agents in recent weeks. These people, these minorities that are claiming they're discriminated against, don't have the white man's back. Some of them do, the conservatives do, they're great. I love these people, they're awesome. But these people don't have my back. They'd rob me if they could. They'd jack me. They'd stab me. They'd shoot. They'd do a drive-by. And then they want me to support them. While I have to be in fear of my life and my family's safety at my house. These people don't have your back. It's a rage thing. They're just pissed off. They get likes on social media. It's all about me, 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 me. You got to understand, dude, African Americans in America, 92% of them vote for Democrats. They engage in horrible groupthink. They also engage in tremendous violence, ultra violence. Not all of them. Most of them are absolutely Wonderful, beautiful people. Hit me up to hang out, man. Y'all, anybody know anybody programmers? Send them my way. I need help, man. All these crazy leftists think I'm racist, dude. The only people that want to hang out with me anymore are black people. Because they're also too terrified. They're getting PTSD at this point in time. They don't want to talk about racism all day, dude. They don't want to have to talk about all these times when they've been oppressed and then have somebody else, a white dude, come up with the story that's way worse, like the story when I was almost murdered by a gangbanger from Atlanta in a hostage situation between him and a pregnant woman pointing guns at each other, high on drugs. I got put into a closet. I was trying to claw my way out of an RV closet to have the guy pull me out of the closet and a woman pull a handgun out, and then it turns into a standoff between a serial killer with an assault rifle and a pregnant woman with a pistol. Lasted for 3 hours. My right to my life is more important than any racism that you've experienced in your life. That ain't shit. I live in fear because that gang-banging serial killer took my ID. He said, if you tell anybody, I'm going to come and kill you and burn your house down, because he thought I stole from him. This isn't a game anymore. All these moms out here, let's look at these retards. They're all white. They're in a city where there's hardly any police shootings. I went through and I looked at the police shootings in Portland, Oregon. They were tragedies. Some of them were mentally ill. It sucks that happened. But you know what? For every single person murdered by a cop, there's 208 people murdered by somebody else in the United States. They're not doing it because they want to, dude. You think anybody be out there doing it as a hobby? No. No, you gotta pay them to do that, dude. You could back them up. I remember when I helped start the 2016 Portland anti-Trump protest. I remember being with the heads of this Don't Shoot Portland group. And they were talking hella shit about Ted Wheeler the whole time. This group of people, they don't like Ted Wheeler. They want to replace him. But then Ted Wheeler supports the protest because he wants them to vote for him. It's because he's an ivory tower liberal. He sits up top his ivory tower, telling you about policies, trying to get you to vote for him because it makes you feel good. And he'll tell you anything you want to hear to get you to like his post, watch the ads, buy the product, and vote for him. And this is why ivory tower liberals are scum, and you should never trust them. They live in an environment where they replace everybody. If you can't cut it, it's a cutthroat environment, somebody else will. These are the people who are causing all of these problems because they're telling you whatever you want to hear because they want you to like them. Here's a video of them attempting to get sympathy while of moms links arms in the tear gas. So yeah, oh, feel so bad for these Portland moms. No, I'm not going to feel bad for the Portland moms. They dispersed tear gas. What does that mean? That means it was declared a riot. When it is declared a riot, it is no longer a peaceful protest. At that point in time, you need to go home. And if you come back the next day, after you slept, it doesn't make it a different protest. We've already heard everything you have to say. We don't know what the hell kind of laws you're trying to repeal. We don't know what the hell kind of laws you're trying to pass. It's been 61 days of this terrorism, looting, rioting, murdering, stabbing, shootings, bombings. We're tired of it, man. I want to go on with my life. I got shit to do. I got AI to write. I got music to play. I've got a child to play Dungeons and Dragons with. That's what I want to do with my time. I want to build. I want to create. I don't want to destroy. These people want to destroy me. They want to destroy everything I've built because they think I am a privileged, white, racist, fascist because I don't believe everything they say and because I bring up facts about history. This is a threat to them. Knowledge of World War II, knowledge of how fascists came about through the women's suffrage movement, knowledge that Democrats owned slaves, started the KKK, opposed women's suffrage, and passed the 1994 crime bill that created the prison industrial complex, that created all of this. No, actually, hold on. No, it didn't create the violence. It doesn't. No, the police violence was really bad a long time ago. And then after the war on drugs started, the police violence went way down. Way down. So you can say what you want about the war on drugs, but the cops used to lynch people. And after the war on drugs, they stopped. Next article from Newsweek. Facebook removes most hate speech before removes most hate speech before people see it, Zuckerberg tells Congress. Facebook removes 89% of all hate speech before users see it, CEO Mark Zuckerberg told lawmakers Wednesday as tech giants such as his company came under fire during an antitrust hearing. Maryland Representative Jamie Baskin asked Zuckerberg whether he plans to manage the use of Facebook's endangered social division in the U.S. during the often heated hearing. Baskin noted that some notoriously used Facebook for election interference, pro-Trump advocacy, and white nationalism in the past. And so this is absolute bullshit. Fake news. So when they say used platform for election interference, I've already covered this in detail on a prior episode of Real Simple News. I went over in detail the civil rights, the independent civil rights audit by the crazy lefty, and one of the lefties is engaged in a lawsuit against the Secret Service that gives her a conflict of interest because she has reasons to state that all this racism is happening with Donald Trump in order to further her lawsuit. They're claiming that Donald Trump is engaging in election interference by talking about the mail-in voter fraud. And it's 100% happening. Do I have the slide up? Okay, I was going to do it in a different order. I got to do it in the order that I have the slides. The election interference in New Jersey, they had in one of the special elections, there was 19% of the ballots were disqualified. Up to 40% of the ballots were disqualified in some precincts. And it's because people with Trump derangement syndrome hate Donald Trump, Republicans, conservatives, and police so much that they're willing to engage in election interference. And whenever you change systems quickly in an election, you're going to have bad actors that are going to come in and commit election fraud. Historically, it's always happened. I'm not making stuff up. This has been the long history of democracy, has been people stifling it because they feel like their position is so much more important than everybody else's. And this is the problem with equality movements, is they think that you wronged them and that you took from them, and they're willing to kill you. So why on earth would you think that they would not engage in election interference? So they're saying that Trump is utilizing this to spread misinformation, saying voter ID. They're saying voter ID is racist, to require voter ID. And the whole problem with this is that, well, what would happen if you didn't have an ID? How would it hurt you if you got an ID from the government so that you could vote? Right. So that would actually help you if you got an ID. Wouldn't hurt you. And if you didn't have an ID, we could have a system to work with that. But the fact is that people do, when you have a mail-in ballot. I live in Oregon. We have mail-in voting here. And when the ballot comes in, the ballot sits on the table, typically. And sometimes I've been switching from being a liberal, and I joined with a walkaway campaign. And now I am I missed some elections, and the ballot's just sitting on the table. And what happens is that people with Trump derangement syndrome start to steal the ballots. And so they're saying that anyone, because China has been engaging in massive amounts of tampering on Wikipedia and in the mainstream media and in universities in order to promote anti-racist agenda. So they're saying anything that's connected to enforcing our immigration laws is white supremacy. And I've debunked this claim more times than I can count on this show right now. I'm going to continue in this article. It says Baskin pointed to a profit motive for Facebook to overlook the 6.5 billion fake accounts created per year since the company reported those numbers to investors. Zuckerberg responded by saying that Facebook removes hate speech and, quote, billions of fake accounts each year from social networking platform, often before users are able to see it. And the reason why they're trying to do this, well, they have to do it. Some of this. They're classified as an information service right now. Whether or not they are a news publisher that publishes news, because when people live stream on Facebook, such as I am doing right now, they are publishing news. I am an official news organization and fact-checking service that is a competition to Facebook. So let's see what they said was, see what they did to kale. I've covered this a couple times on the show. First one here. They won't even tell you what it was. I don't even know what the hell it was. Go to the top. What do we got? So here was one where it says, no, somebody was saying, my response was long and detailed. And they said, oh, it took you all day to spit out that blathering nonsense. I was like, no, I did it because I'm educated. I can type 80 words a minute. I read the news. I have studied the issues. I'm not brainwashed idiot because I took critical thinking class in engineering school and I can actually think for myself. Nazis were socialist and communists from the city. People think far right is the opposite of the far left, but this is hogwash. Left versus right used to mean the flattest hierarchy on the farthest left, communism, versus the steepest hierarchy, Nazism, the farthest right. In America, this was changed by Rush Limbaugh to mean left liberal and right conservative. This was when far right was expanded to include the KKK, which was a misspeak. Actually, no, the KKK is a steep hierarchy. It was included to include enemies of the left. Anybody who's anti-communist, who's for immigration policy, who is for conserving their culture, these people are all put into the far right category because what China has a long history of doing is annihilating cultures through taking out your cultural institutions They did it in China in the Cultural De-Evolution, where they took out the Confucius, the Taoist, and the Buddhist historical and cultural facilities, like their temples. They're attempting to currently do it in America. They're using AI algorithm. Reading on what I said, it said, this was when far right, hold on, KKK. Then it constantly expanded until we have the batshit crazy leftist of today, where they think everything is racist because most leftists live in big cities where everything is oppressive because the rent is so damn high. And I linked to this war history article about how over 50% of the Nazis were actually communists. They took marching orders from Stalin. And I've gone over it a number of times on the show. It's true. They first started fighting each other in the streets. Antifa was a street fighting club. They fought fascists, and then they soon realized they had a mutual enemy. And then they joined together, and then they worked with Stalin they were going to control Europe together. And then Stalin taught Hitler how to kill the 1% to control, to take over countries. And then Hitler committed the genocide against the Jews after he started losing. Well, Hitler started running out of food and gas, and then he invaded Russia. And then the Russians joined with the Europeans. And then whenever the Germans started losing the war, then they killed the Jews. That's how it worked. That happened. So here's another one. It says that the Facebook AI algorithm said was spam. It says, white feminist protest for BLM for one reason and one reason alone, because it's an equality movement. They're out there in this case because it's taking off her clothes. I'm talking about Naked Athena, to get money because they think women are paid less than men. This is there's a problem with this because women own 2/3 of the wealth in the United States. That's a fact. They control 85% of consumer spending. When you see ads on Facebook convincing women that they are unpaid, it's because they want women to ask their boss for a raise so that they can spend more money. Women work 50 minutes less per day than men, but they own 2/3 of the wealth. But women, single white women are literally the richest people on earth, but they are the victims because they benefit from it financially, or they'll tell you they're victims because they benefit from it financially. There are about 20,000 murders in the U.S. each year. Of those, about 49% of the victims are black, and 92% of those were killed by other black people. Each year, African Americans have a 0.003125% chance of being murdered by a black person and a 0.0007375% chance of being killed by a cop, based on the numbers of killings compared to the population of the United States. And many of the 235 African Americans killed by cops each year murdered a black man. You should look at the list of police shootings in Portland before you judge the police for doing their jobs and riot and loot. And I showed the link here to the Portland Cop Watch list of shootings that show you the tragedies in detail, each and every single one of them. You can look it up. Some of them deserved it. Some of them were mentally ill. Some of them were accidents. None of them were worth rioting for. So this list goes on. I'm just going to scroll through it. And if you want to pause through this video, I'm just going to show. You can pause. Here's a show. Can't see that comment. Probably because it was involving antitrust issues because I was talking a lot about antitrust issues with Facebook. For instance, murder rates are sky high. So basically, Facebook has been censoring Real Simple News. I have a website, realsimplenews.net, where you can go to and you can contribute comments to the comment section, where you can do things that are competition to Facebook. So when Facebook does this, when they say stuff Like this one says, George Floyd final autopsy said Floyd's heart attack was caused by fentanyl poisoning. Spam. Newsweek. People post news articles all the time. So obviously, the pattern here is this was a competing message from another news organization that also had a competing fact-checking organization called WikiSpy. And they censored my post. They censored my comments, claiming it was spam using an AI algorithm. And I am an AI engineer. I know how they're doing this. They have moderators say whether or not it was spam. And it's based on the political bias of the moderator, what the AI algorithm is going to say. So when you're training AI algorithms, what you are going to find is that you have to give them a training set. And in that training set, one method is to classify them. And so what they do is they have the moderators say whether or not it's spam or not. And based upon what the moderator said, then the algorithm is now going to think that that was spam. And if it gets triggered for spam, then they're going to, then the more times I get called spam, then the more likely I am to have my comment deleted as spam. And it obviously is not spam, because if it was spam, it would go to realsimplenews.net. But if they did remove those links, that would be definitely an antitrust suit. And this is also, too, an antitrust action by a company that's attempting to stifle a competing news organization by using these, what they're saying is hate speech or hateful conduct, which hateful conduct is identical to hate speech. They're two, we could argue about the semantics of this word. But the reality is that we're arguing semantics. So basically, we're going to have to sue them, and they're going to have to give me a whole bunch of money. In this next article from the New York Post, Twitter defends blocking Trump tweets, but not Iran's Ayatollah Khamenei. A Twitter spokesman has defended the company's decision to block and restrict tweets from President Trump, but not those from Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, which calls for genocide against the Israeli people. So apparently what they're saying, what I said, they said it was spam, but let's be real. They thought it was hate speech, but it was, they couldn't mark it as hate speech, but they didn't want it on the platform because they're attempting to stifle their competition, because their competition is engaging in speech that these leftists don't like. And when they do that, they got to shut you down. Reading on in the article, the reason, ? Because the Iran's dictator's tweet passed the commentary on political issues of the day, while Trump's could inspire harm, Twitter claims. Okay. During a hearing on anti-Semitism in front of the Knesset Israeli parliament in Jerusalem, lawmakers grilled a Twitter representative over why the platform was policing missives from Trump, but not other world dictators such as Khamenei, calling Israel a cancerous growth, which it is not. The Israeli people, as much as they might think these are white Europeans who are coming and taking their land, the Africans are also too saying that everybody else took their land and that they are the sole people who have right to inhabit Earth because humanity came from Africa and Africa was here first, and that means nobody else has a right to be here. It's called anti-Semitism. You might not like the fact that they're here or there, but they're there. They're very powerful, and they're some of the only sane, rational people in the area. So we should be very grateful that there are these people who are descendants from the Europeans who are inhabiting some land. Because, I mean, let's be real, man. Muslims have mass slaughtered more millions of people than I can count, man. Like, everybody's guilty, dude. White people got genocides. Black people sold themselves into slavery. The Aztecs did ritual human sacrifice. Native Americans, they wiped out other tribes and took slaves. And then the white man brought democracy and government to your land. And the nomads that were wandering around without wheels out in the woods then became modern city people. And it was not the white man that took your land, but a city. A city. And the city has a right to be there. And if you don't like the people that are there, then you can move somewhere else. So this goes back to the anti-Semitism that's rampant among liberals. They don't understand what anti-Semitism is. It's not that you're criticizing the Jewish religion. Every religion has critics. Anti-Semitism, very specifically, is where you are blaming Jews for things that they did not do. I, too, used to think that the Israeli government was evil and that they had all its influence in the United States through the AI Pact, and I hated the Israelis. And I did not realize that I was engaging in anti-Semitism at the time. Now that I have woken up, I do not believe that. I do not believe that any group of people has control over the world. There's so many different sources of power in the world. It would be crazy to think that any one of them are controlling it because the power sources evaporate after generations. There's very few old. It's very few. They disappear after some number of generations. So there's no Jews controlling the world, man. The Israelis are not brutalizing the Palestinians. The Palestinians didn't want a one-state solution. They wanted to live there, and they wanted to engage in terrorism. When people engage in terrorism, you don't have any other resort other than military action. In this next article from the New Yorker, entitled "The Constitutional Case Against Trump's Use of Department of Homeland Security," it's from author named Isaac Kuntiner. I usually don't do opinions, but there's some stuff I got to debunk in here. Article says this month President Trump deployed law enforcement agents from the Department of Homeland Security in Portland, Oregon, ostensibly to protect federal property from protesters that began after the killing of George Floyd. That's not true. The federal agents were there to protect the citizens' constitutional rights and to defend federal property from an insurgency. They definitely had insurgents trying to burn the federal courthouse down. They did attempt to do that. They were not very successful. They did burn some stuff in the building. So, and it says the killing of George Floyd. And George Floyd had a lethal dose of meth in his system, a lethal dose of fentanyl because he was an IV drug addict. And he had COVID in his system. And before he was placed in an ambulance, an EMT checked his pulse.
and then George Floyd had a heart attack in the ambulance. So George Floyd was alive in the ambulance when he had a heart attack. So it's impossible that the police could have killed George Floyd. Continuing the article, but these DHS agents who wore military-style camouflage have not identified themselves as law enforcement, have arrested and detained protesters without probable cause. This also, too, is a lie. The protesters who were detained and arrested, the police did reveal their identity to them. Police officers are not required to reveal their identity to you. Police officers have what is called freedom of speech, just like you. In fact, anything that you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Police officers also have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when you throw explosives and projectiles at police officers and detonate explosives near them, you are endangering their right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. You're no longer engaging in a peaceful protest. It is a violation of their civil rights. So, they have probable cause. They did identify themselves. Reading on, it says, inflaming protests in Portland and other cities. And so, they're saying that the feds are trying to agitate the protests because they're under the control of Donald Trump. And this entire thing is a anti-Trump protest. It's not for civil rights. If it was for civil rights, the civil rights movement was founded by black conservatives. And the black conservatives are not on board with the BLM Antifa Nazis because they are Marxist and they want to kill police officers and Trump supporters, and no conservative people are going to be behind you on that. In fact, we're actually going to push back, going to stock up on ammunition and assault rifles and pistols and armor and whatever else the militia needs, because that's why we have the Second Amendment right to bear arms. Reading on in the article, with many Americans furious that the administration had set federal law enforcement officers to fulfill policing functions that are not part of Washington's governing mandate. So, Washington. You mean like Seattle? Oh, yeah, the place that declared the protests to be riots all the time. Yeah. So that would be against the laws there. And federal police officers have jurisdiction to enforce local laws. Any police officer who is sworn in a state, you can even be deputized. You are able to enforce the laws of that state, and you are given immunity from prosecution for, I forget what I'm sorry, I forget off the top of my head exactly what they call that. Prosecutorial immunity. Yeah. And the courts, the federal courts, also have the ability to enforce federal laws. So if the federal government can cite you a ticket for breaking a state law, that means that they're well within their job duty to enforce the laws, being a law enforcement agent in that state. And it's not just Washington, it's also Oregon, where they also, too, have been declaring these BLM Antifa Nazi riots. On Tuesday, in a tense hearing before House Judiciary Committee, Attorney General William Barr defended the deployment, arguing that violent rioters and anarchists have hijacked legitimate protests to wreak senseless havoc on destruction. They're not legitimate protests. No, they were over George Floyd. They're Democrat race riots. Democrat race riots are not legitimate protests. They're Democrat race riots. Let's be real. We don't have Republicans out there engaging in race riots. This is just Democrat race riots. The following day, Oregon's governor announced that an agreement had been reached with DHS to withdraw the deployment personnel from Portland. The department responded by saying the agreement was conducted on the safety of the federal property within the city. And so what they're leaving out is that they agreed to start enforcing the laws and preventing protesters from burning down the federal courthouse. They always omit things. So when you're doing journalism, details matter. Details really matter, dude. If your story is what was the Facebook accuracy? If your accuracy, what does Mark Zuckerberg say? 89% accuracy of hate speech classification. 89%. How exactly do you go about determining how accurate that was? What, it predicted the thing within the person who monitored the algorithm's bias? And so this was an independent organization, and we have it's open source, so you can actually verify that what they said was true? No. Just trust me, brah. Just trust me, man. We control the town square. Nobody can speak on here without our permission. We give you the mic. We can take it away. Just trust me, brah. Oops. Wrong monitor. So, they're concerned about the Federal Protective Services, and they're tied in with Border and Customs Protection Agency, the Federal Protective Services, the Uniform Security Police Division of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. They brought in these guys, and they brought in the Border and Customs Patrol people. And where are they at? Here's Border Customs Services Agency of the U.S. federal government that collected important tariffs and performed other selected border security duties. That's the key one here, border security duties. So, sorry. So why would the Customs and Border Patrol people be here? Why do they have reasons to be at the protest enforcing laws? First off, they're law enforcement officials. Doesn't matter. A Forest Service law enforcement official is just as capable of enforcing state law as a state or local cop. A local cop can enforce a state law. A state cop can enforce a local law. Duh. So this article from the New York Post says, white supremacists, drug cartels add to George Floyd chaos. White supremacists and drug cartels are playing off the George Floyd, it says killing, it's a homicide, we don't know, the trial hasn't happened, to create more havoc on the streets of Minneapolis. Minnesota governor said Saturday. Tim Walz confirmed they received reports that hordes of white supremacists who joined the looting of businesses. During a pre-dawn press conference, Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey laid out their plans for quelling the violence, rocked the city since Floyd died Monday. White officers have been arresting Floyd and kneeling on the back of his neck. And it was shown that could not have killed him because the weight was at most 100 pounds on the back of George Floyd's neck. But reading on, it says on marauding white supremacists, so cartel, hold on, let me keep reading. Marauding white supremacists, Walz told reporters, my suspicions and what I've seen on this, yes, it gets worse than that. Walt said, marauding racists, the cartels who are wandering wondering if there is a break in drug transmission are trying to take advantage of the chaos. That's why the situation is on the federal level. That one right there. Is that the right monitor? Yeah, that's the right monitor. Okay, yeah, this thing right here. This is why it's on the federal level. Customs and Border Patrol,
cartels, illegal immigrants, undocumented they're not, dude, this undocumented immigrant thing is bullshit. They're illegal immigrants. They're breaking the law. It's illegal. 1 in 20 Mexicans is in the United States illegally. There's 20 homeless people for every single 20 illegal immigrants for every single homeless person. And a lot of homeless people are getting strung out on cartel dope that they're getting from the illegal immigrants. 30% of federal drug trafficking convictions are from illegal immigrants. Illegal immigrants are not allowed to work and therefore are susceptible to engaging in narcotics trafficking to bring in fentanyl, meth, and heroin, I already said that. In order to kill American civilians. Fentanyl comes mainly from China, comes from the Chinese Nazi Party, who also engages in a cyber warfare operation in order to deliver these chemical agents to the American people, which constitutes a form of cyber warfare. Because once the Chinese government is starting to prevent us from enforcing our border policies by labeling conservatives as racist, xenophobes, far right, then this allows China to then deliver chemical agents in the form of fentanyl through the cartels. This presents a national security emergency, which justifies federal law enforcement in the vicinity. This next article from The Independent, it says, register today. Here, this is a video of a Mexican drug cartel shows off uniformed troops with military weapons and unarmored vehicles. And so these people are scary. This is the military. These people are stoking up the Democrat race riot. See, you want to talk about stormtroopers. Those are stormtroopers. Those are for real stormtroopers, dude.
A lot of really creepy statements.
In this next article it's a tweet from Andy No. It says, rioters jump over the barrier and light some of the incendiary device to throw at Portland Federal Courthouse. Then he's shot with pepper balls after he hurls a projectile. Fuck that guy, dude. Yeah, man, that's we paid for that, dude. This next article from NPR says, in George Floyd protests, China sees a powerful propaganda opportunity. Protests across the United States in the wake of George Floyd's death, thank you very much for calling it a death, created an unlikely opportunity for China. State TV has aired images of the chaotic protest scenes during this widely watched evening news program, offered searing commentary, but has also highlighted the U.S. government's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Quote, American politicians must ask themselves, one announcer said, on what grounds they must spew their sanctions nonsense. Should they ask American people for forgiveness? And so during the George Floyd protest, the Chinese government was using companies that were controlled by the Chinese Nazi Party. I call them the Chinese Nazi Party because they have millions of Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps, hundreds of millions of impoverished Chinese who work like slaves. They have ultra-rich Chinese in the city where they have a complete different living standard. There is Hong Kong, there is Taiwan. They have different rules. You're allowed private ownership in Hong Kong. And the Chinese government is a authoritarian dictatorship run by someone who looks like Winnie the Pooh. And they are attempting to be the world's number one superpower. This is textbook National Socialism. National Socialism was invented as an alternative to Marxism, in which there was a hierarchy, because when you have a flat hierarchy, you're just going to get one group bias it towards their in-group. In World War II, it was the Jews. And then everybody else is going to hate them. And then you're going to end up with what is called dielectric materialism, where you have the eternal conflict between the lower class that has to take out the 1% in order to keep control over the community. And this is what creates the far-right steep hierarchy that requires people to murder everyone who is in opposition because you won't go along with it otherwise. And so China's got their hands in it. They've been sending us propaganda through Facebook, through Chinese Nazi Party controlled companies. And those are probably the messages that were deleted, the ones that you could not read before on the Facebook when I showed you which of my posts were unlawfully censored in an antitrust manner by Facebook against Real Simple News. Those tweets were probably talking about this. We don't know exactly what they were, but I'm presuming that they were because I was talking about that. And Facebook has a conflict of interest here. So if they're censoring these posts because I'm talking about criminal actions that Facebook is performing, well, this is interfering with a police investigation. That's a crime. Covering up the crime is also, too, a crime. And in the Floyd protest, they hit us with what is called atrocity propaganda. Atrocity propaganda is Hitler refined this concept in World War II, is where you give people propaganda that shows the atrocities of the enemy. And you have to have a set amount of lies that you repeat over and over and over and over again. And after you repeat the lies enough times, people will just believe them as facts. And this identically mirrors what the BLM Antifa Nazis have been doing with this whole Democrat race riot, where they are claiming the police, that there's all this police brutality against black people, when in reality, black people have 5 times higher violent crime rate, and the number of police homicides is dependent on the number of police interactions. And when you're out in gangs, robbing people, stealing cars, murdering people, torturing people, then you're going to have more police interactions. And when you have more police interactions, you're going to have more criminal charges. And so black people say, oh, but black people get so much more jail time than white people. Only they just completely don't tell you that the reason why that is because the violence in the African American community is 5 times higher than in the white community. And the people who are getting longer jail sentences had prior convictions for violent crimes. And so when you have prior convictions for violent crimes, you're going to get a longer prison sentence. I know this sounds completely obvious, but you have to state this because they've been repeating these lies over and over and over and over again until they start to believe them, and at which point in time it all becomes nonsensical, and China steps in and starts repeating these messages through their companies that they are paying Facebook in order to deliver what is called boogeyman propaganda. And atrocity propaganda can be a form of boogeyman propaganda. In this context, it was actually boogeyman propaganda. It was a form of boogeyman propaganda called Run Boogeyman, Attack Boogeyman. And what this is when you create a situation where people feel like there's a boogeyman, it's coming to get them, but they're outnumbered by the boogeyman, and so they can't speak up. And this is a run boogeyman. And when you see a run boogeyman, you run. And so this is when the this is during the right phase of the left, right, center to socialist utopia plan from the Chinese that I uncovered with an AI algorithm. And first you start by showing the far right, building them out, making their groups as large as possible by expanding the definition of far right in order to include all of the enemies of China. And then you commit some atrocity. You send in agents in order to commit violent acts. And then you start provoking conflicts. And then you do from right to left, where you then stoke the left and you boost the left. And then you then create a fight between the left and the right. And this is what the Chinese Nazi Party is doing on TikTok with the help of Chinese H-1B visa engineers and software programmers, people in the tech industry that they're bringing in order to save money because they don't want to hire the white dudes because their GPAs are too low now. They don't want to hire the black people because their GPAs are some of the lowest. They just want the Latinos because they're the new big customer in town. They want the Asians and they want the women. And this is why they are promoting all of this, what they're saying is diversity. But in reality, it is called the doctrine of diversity. And what this states is that diversity is paramount importance for them to be able to compete in the world because they've self-radicalized themselves to convince themselves that they have to have immigrants because the tech companies are controlled by immigrants. And so they are able to control the workplace and control the speech by firing who they want in the workplace. And when you so when they're trying to hire minorities, really what they're trying to say is we're trying to lower our cost because we're trying to hire people from the customers that we want to sell to. 85% of consumer spending is controlled by women. Black people have some of the lowest incomes, except for African immigrants are the highest paid immigrants in the United States. So they are primarily interested in getting the money from the women, which is why they institutionalized this, what is called white feminism, which is a racist form of feminism where they put white women's issues at the top. And the reason for this is because the majority of women are white. Women control 85% of consumer spending. And so you have to put them at the top because there are the cash cows that they're sending all of these ads to out on Facebook. Ivory Tower liberals are some of the sleaziest people on earth. White feminists, I'd say most of them are innocent. I think, honestly, they've just been radicalized. This next article from New York Post is entitled Vatican Reportedly Hacked by China Before Religious Freedom Talks. Chinese hackers infiltrated the Vatican's computer network in recent months ahead of sensitive talks with Beijing over religious freedom, a cybersecurity firm had concluded. And if you're not aware, China has millions of Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps, which they are saying are re-education camps. Wow, that totally doesn't make it any better, dude. It kind of makes it even more scary. Are they bringing re-education camps here? The report by Massachusetts-based Recorded Future found that the hacking efforts were spearheaded by Red Delta, a state-sponsored Chinese group. Took place over months using malware designed to give hackers access to the Vatican's email servers. The attack comes as the Catholic Church and Beijing entered negotiations from the church's status in China as the Chinese Nazi Party cracks down on religious groups. And the reason why they have to crack down on religious groups is because the religious groups are not complying with the Chinese Nazi Party. And in order to enforce the dictatorship of Winnie the Pooh, you must oppress the religious minorities there. So they're going after the Catholics, and this is how the Chinese operate, dude. The Chinese are crazy good hackers, man. I mean, big ups, credit where credit is due. Winnie the Pooh has the best hackers. Woo-hoo. This next fake news article from CNN entitled "Trump Floats Delaying Election Despite Lack of Authority to Do So." President Donald Trump explicitly floated delaying November's presidential election on Thursday, lending extraordinary voice to persistent concerns that he will seek to circumvent voting in a contest where he's currently trails his opponent by double digits. That depends on the poll you look at. Look, when these pollsters say that their poll is within 3 to 5% accuracy and they sampled like 1,500 people, what they're telling you is that the mainstream media has been scamming people this entire time. And what they're trying to do is they're getting funded by political organizations. I used to be a pollster. I used to call people. I was one of the best pollsters. I was so good because I have the Missouri accent, right? So I was making like 4 times as much money as everybody else that worked there. And so I know exactly how these people operate. They're getting paid to do these polls because they're basically advertising for political candidates. So when they call you, they set these polls up very craftily to set you up to try to get you to start talking about what you think about this politician. And once they start talking, okay, so if they immediately say, "What do you think about this politician?" You're going to say, "I don't know." And then this politician's going to have a horrible, or they're going to say, "I don't like that guy." Because if you're going to ask anybody anything, you can pretty much guarantee they're probably going to say no. So what they do is they butter you up when they're talking to you. They get people like me with those smooth talking Missouri accents to get you feel comfortable. And then once you feel comfortable, then they're like, "Oh, well, what do you think about this guy?" And then they ask you, "What do you think about this guy's policy on this and this?" And then you start to say, "Oh, I like that guy." So when they say 3 to 5% accuracy, what they mean is they are so good at brainwashing you that there's a 3 to 5% deviancy from them getting everything that they want. Because they're ivory tower liberal scum pieces of shit, and we need to take them out. In this next article from Real Clear Politics, 1 in 5 ballots rejected as fraud is charged in New Jersey mail-in ballot. This one's from June 26th, so it was a while ago. It says, following accusations of widespread voter fraud, intimidation, and ballot theft in the May 12th municipal election in Peterson, New Jersey, State Attorney General Goober S. Grewal announced Thursday he would be charging 4 men with voter fraud, including the vice president of the city council mandated and candidate for that body. With races still undecided, control of the city council hangs in balance. Peterson is New Jersey's 3rd largest city in the election, will decide the fate of the municipal budget in excess of $300 million, in addition to hundreds of millions in education spending and state aid. Can't read that. We're receive only something. We're coming to. I can't read that. More than 3,109 votes. 19% of the total ballots were disqualified from the elections. They're leaving out in some precincts. It was up to 40% of the votes in some precincts were disqualified. So when Donald Trump says there's massive potential for voter fraud, it's true. It's on the records. It actually happens. And the reason why is because Trump supporters have Trump derangement syndrome. They hate police officers and Trump supporters and conservatives so bad, they're willing to murder people, loot, riot, and burn down their own neighborhoods. And they're getting money. They're getting paid to do it because they're getting donations on Facebook, and Facebook is profiting from the donations. Democrats are profiting from the donations. All kinds of random people are scamming, saying they're part of Black Lives Matter, doing petitions on MoveOn.org, which is run by George Soros, and Change.org. And once they start doing fundraisers for it, then Soros is now funding them because he is the one that determines what petitions make it to the front page, which ones you see when they advertise. So when you are donating money to MoveOn.org, you're donating money to George Soros issues, because George Soros is in control of which articles come up to the top. So this is what they mean when they say George Soros is paying the protesters. And these people have a financial motive in their local state governments in order to control city council in this example, because they're going to lose all kinds of funding, because they think that Republicans are racist, because they've been brainwashed and they weren't paying attention to politics up until Donald Trump came, and then they got hit with all this fake news. So this is Article 3, Section 2, Clause 2 of the U.S. Constitution. It says, in all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers, and councils, those which the state shall be a party, the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction. So, given the information that we just saw, that there's been rampant fraud with mail-in voting, and that a number of states are attempting to institute mail-in voting because of the fake COVID lockdowns, which were so absolutely just mind-bogglingly stupid, caused way more deaths because most people get COVID inside of a house. COVID usually goes from house to house, and then you can go give it somewhere else, but most people are at their house most of the times. So you don't wear face masks at your house. So chances are the COVID rate's just going to, you might be able to affect it a little bit, but once you lock down people, like in March, the suicide rate increased 358% in the United States. At that rate, that would kill as many people as COVID. That would kill more people than COVID if that suicide rate continued. There are other harsh consequences other than old people, because most of the young people are statistically very unlikely to die from COVID, like almost zero statistical likelihood. It's all older people that could have also too died from something else. We might have classified this person as a flu death in 2 or 3 months. You're saying COVID killed them. COVID killed them. But they might have died 3 weeks later from the flu. It just doesn't make any sense. It is because Democrats are trying to play gods, because 86% of scientists are Democrats. They're in a heterodoxy, which means same orthodoxy. They engage in groupthink. They engage in authoritarianism, and they engage in rampant replacement of people and targeting of white males to replace them with younger, more diverse people, which is actually code for you have kids now. We don't want to pay for any of your health care. We want a bunch of young people to work for cheap. So it's an exploitation thing. When they're saying we want more women to come and give up having a child, kill off your family line so that you can come slave for Mark Zuckerberg, Jack Dorsey, and Bill Gates, and Jeff Bezos. You know what? I'm an AI engineer, and I'm totally willing to come do that for y'all. I have a kid. I can probably still crunch. In fact, actually, I've got some really cool AI sciences I'm working on with sigma A star B equals sigma WX plus B, using a Chinese room abstract stack machine in order to do symbolic operations, using my WikiSpy tool to monitor Wikipedia for tampering by hostile agents and political bias, my fact-checking service. So, what am I talking about? So, what am I talking about? I don't know. I went off on a little bit of a tangent there. Shameless plug. Contribute to WikiSpy. We're open source, man. Hire me to fact-check news articles. But here, look. Donald Trump can take the states to court. Donald Trump, if you sued Donald Trump, you would go directly to the Supreme Court. If Donald Trump sued a state in order to prevent them from implementing their voter rights thing, Donald Trump would be able to take them to court just like any other citizen would. In fact, any citizen could actually take them to court. You, yourself, if you live in America, you can take a state to court, and the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction. It says anything which the state shall be a party. Anything. But you have to make it to the Supreme Court, right? So chances that they're going to take up your case in the Supreme Court, very small, unless you're the president of the United States. And Donald Trump is the president of the United States. And he has the authority to take the states to court. He does. It was fake news. All right. Sweet. Made it through to the favorite part of the show. I'm only doing the green screen because it's cool and to get more people. But this is how it all started with the Feed Lab and the RSS news articles. RSS is a feed of news articles that most newspapers publish to. And so this is how we get our news here at Wikipedia, at Real Simple News and WikiSpy. So this next article from the Daily Mail says, coronavirus, LA may pay infected illegal immigrants to stay at home. Los Angeles City Council wants to see set aside $25 million that would be used to pay wages for any worker, including illegal immigrants and homeless and felons, while they're quarantined. Really? Didn't they just give like $800 million to the illegal immigrants over there? This mayor of LA is one sleaze bag motherfucker, because the city of LA, 34% of people there are illegal immigrants. Let's look at the demographics of LA. .5% Latino, almost all from Mexico. Third of them are illegal immigrants. 29.4% non-Hispanic whites, 10% Asians. There's 9.8% black people. So when you look at actions that ivory tower liberals do, you have to look at the voter base. Who's the voter base? Who's got the money? Who's got the money? Who's got the votes? So the votes are going to be these people, because that would be 80% of the people who are there, but a third of these people are, including the Asians. So most of the tax revenue comes from the wealthy people. And because they are ultra liberal there, they have a progressive tax system, and the poorer people are the beneficiaries of the tax system. So what they are doing is they are taking money. Women control 2/3 of the wealth in the U.S., and they control 85% of consumer spending. So they're getting this money from sales tax. Right? Sales tax, right? Because you're in California and you pay sales tax there. I'm in Oregon. You don't pay sales tax here. And so they're taking the money from the white people And then they're giving it to the illegal immigrants to get the Latinos to vote for them. You're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Or no, they're robbing Peter to get Paul to vote for them. Woo! These guys are some slime ball motherfuckers. Woo! Damn! I cannot believe these people. We got 1 in 20 Mexicans in the U.S. illegally. We've got 20 illegal immigrants for every homeless person. We got homeless people getting loaded on cartel dope, taking shits on the street. You can get cholera, hepatitis C, HIV, typhoid fever, the Black Plague, TB, and COVID when you step on a hypodermic needle in a pile of human shit next to a ivory tower with a homeless person that coughed while they're injecting cartel dope with fentanyl in it from China. And this is California. And they are spilling out up in here into Oregon. And they're saying, oh, you're far right. You know, you're racist because you want to kick the illegal immigrants out. You want to make them move on the other side of the border so that they have to drive an hour to see their family. Or 3 hours, 5 hours. But the fact is, I don't want California to move up to Oregon. When Mexico starts pushing up into LA because we're not enforcing our borders, historically, neighbors have invaded each other and annexed each other's land when you do this. So when they're saying it's far right to enforce your immigration policy, that's just nonsensical. And they're just giving away the people's money to these illegal immigrants because they want people to vote for them. I mean, they're pretty sleazy. This next article from the New York Post says Fauci urges Americans to wear goggles for extra added COVID-19 protection. Woo! Goggles? Dr. Anthony Fauci suggested that people wear goggles or face shields and an added measure of protection against contracting the coronavirus, according to a report. Quote, if you have the goggles or eye shields, you should use it, end quote, Fauci, 79, the top U.S. infection disease experts told ABC News correspondent Dr. Jennifer Aston. Woo. All right. So first he says, oh, no, you don't have to wear masks. You don't have enough N19 or N95 masks. So, no, don't use cloth masks. And then all of a sudden, then they started saying you should use cloth masks, which doesn't make any sense because cloth masks increase your likelihood of getting the flu because when you inhale the particles and they build up on your mask, they like stay there for months, right? So if I use the same mask, I'm going to just start inhaling the viruses, and then I'm going to get sick. But if you do it that way, it's not actually that bad because the smaller the dose of the virus that you can get whenever you get it, the greater your chance of not dying. Because I built ventilators for a while, I studied it in detail, and whenever you get the sepsis in your lungs, whenever the white blood cells are trying to attack your own organs to stop the disease, if you get, like, let's say somebody coughs in your face and you inhale a whole bunch of stuff, a lot higher probability chance you're going to die. Unless it's, let's see, do I have that other one? I think I took it off. No, here it is. This article from New York Post says, scientists identify 6 different types of COVID in a new study. And this was released yesterday, but this is really old info. This is like really old. We've known this for a long time. I have no idea why this is news. It says British scientists have determined there are 6 different types of COVID-19 distinguished by specific clusters of symptoms, which could help identify the treatment of the deadly contagion. The study conducted in King's College analyzed data from about 1,600 UK and US coronavirus patients who regularly log their symptoms into tracking apps. And so, just like the flu, we have different strands of COVID. Some of them are more deadly than others, and one of them is the most deadly type. That particular type of COVID, that would be the pandemic COVID. This is infuriating. Okay, so the Spanish flu, pandemic of 1918. 1918 was the year when women got their voting rights in Europe and when they started voting for fascism. Yes, go equality! Woo! Kill those people that wronged it. But I'm being, don't do that. I'm being serious there. You gotta be careful. So that was one specific type of the flu. We did not say the flu was the pandemic that year. That's not true. That's a lie. No, N1H1 was the pandemic. A specific type was the pandemic. So when they start lumping all these COVID cases in together, you can see the number of infected people is not correct. Because most of those people were infected with a non-lethal form of COVID, that if you get that form of COVID, you're less likely to die from the lethal form of COVID because your body has white blood cells that can remember the chemical signature, and the white blood cells will be able to detect the infected cells, and they'll be able to do their job and protect you. And the reason why they can't protect you is because SARS-CoV-2 is a new virus, and your body does not know the chemical signatures of it. It's the only reason why it's deadly. It's the only reason why it's deadly for older people. Not deadly for younger people because their bodies aren't going to have an immune system response to it. Because you're dying from SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome. And that requires your body to start doing whatever, I forget what that's called when your body attacks your autoimmune response. Yeah, it's an autoimmune response. It's the same thing as an autoimmune response. So those people are having an autoimmune response. Why? Because their white blood cells are detecting bad cells. They're flagging the cells. I know a lot about viruses, by the way. They're flagging the cells by having a chemical signature, and then the white blood cell comes and eats it. That's how your immune system works. They're called leukocytes. They're amazing. I would highly advise you to study in detail how viruses work, because they're amazing how they work and how your immune system works. That is one of the most complicated, one of the most amazing things on the planet. So this guy Fauci, he doesn't know everything about COVID. He's very knowledgeable about COVID, but COVID is new and nobody knows these things, right? Somebody usually figures out, like the person who figured out, oh, well, we could flip COVID patients on their stomach, and then it opens up areas in their chest so they can get more air in, and then it saves a lot of lives. And then they realize, oh, well, we can give them steroids, or the specific type of steroids. And then there was another thing that had a really good, I forget the other thing. But these things were not discovered by Fauci. They're not. Fauci did not figure out, I can flip a COVID patient on their stomach. Okay, if he's the infectious disease expert, why the hell didn't he know you can flip patients on their stomach? Because he doesn't know everything. Because he's a doctor. He's one doctor. And the reason why doctors are smart are because of all of the doctors. It's not just a one-man band here. It's a group of peer-reviewed It's a body of peer-reviewed knowledge that we're getting lots of scientists to repeat the science. And if you can't repeat the science, then it's not true. And Fauci is not possible. It's not possible for Fauci to repeat this science because it requires the rest of the scientists. And they're going to be the ones that are going to tell Fauci. And then Fauci is going to sort through information. He's going to give it to you. But he is just a person. He's a human. Seems like a really nice guy. Probably really like him. But he's not right all the time. In this next article from the Daily Mail, it says coronavirus, just 5 to 10% of Nordic countries wear face masks. Masks are a rare sight in supermarkets and on buses along the streets in Stockholm, Copenhagen, Oslo, Helsinki, and most of the people who wear them are tourists. So they got this nice, pretty graph. They could show you. Here's a graph from the YouGov, shows percentage of people in each country who say they are wearing a face mask in public places. Countries along with the bottom are Scandinavian nations, while the graph shows how the mask usage is dramatically different in the UK. Can we get that to go away? So here's the Scandinavian countries. They down there at the bottom. Hold on. What is it? Hold on. What does this graph show me again? All right. And then so let's look up Finland COVID death rates. $329 cases, population of Finland 5.35 million people, and it is 329 deaths. And that's 5.5. There's two ways to calculate the mortality rate. There is a mortality rate in relation to what percentage of your population died, and there's a percentage of what percentage of people who were infected or showed up to the hospital died. So, and then you're going to count all the deaths also too as in there. And so this is going to show you that they had a times 100, you're going to see a 0.0059 death rate. So let's go look at the U.S. Go with USA Net. We've had 150,000 deaths, but we are 300 million people. So if 320 million divided by 5, we're 64 times the size. So 323 times 64 would be 20,000. Hold on. Scaled to the U.S., they would have had 20,000 deaths. What? 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 Give me a fucking break, dude. Give me a fucking break, bro. Are you for real? If Finland was the size of the United States. Here, let's do the math again. Sometimes I botch it. Hold on, let's do an exact just so you can see. Let's be more exact. Give me a fucking break, dude. You're kidding me. You are fucking kidding me, dude. If Finland was the size of the United States, they would have had they would have had 20,000 deaths. They aren't wearing masks, dude. Democrats are brainwashed, man. They're brainwashed. This mask thing is bullshit through and through. There's no sense to be made about it. It's brainwashed leftist being authoritarians and they actually caused 130,000 extra deaths, if you want to look at it from this perspective, which I'm not sure would be. Sometimes you can look at it like that. It depends. If we want to look at it like that, well, then I don't think that we could look at it like that because of New York. New York wasn't wearing face masks, but let's look at the charts. But also, yeah, New York was not wearing face masks. Here's a graph of the COVID deaths over time. Is this the right one? Yeah. So here's New York. They weren't wearing face masks. They had a Gaussian curve looking thing, tapered off, did not have a second wave. Then we go look at country. We're looking for states that had second wave. California, a state that locked down, run by brainwashed lunatic leftists who are controlled by the public sector unions, and the Democrats that are there would not normally exist in a normal society. But because California, the way that they're set up is that there's just enough people making money there to justify the scam. The other places having spikes are Florida, another place that locked down. And I don't know if the cities, Orlando, Florida, it's a Republican state. So that goes against the notion that it's just Democrats doing this. That's why I'm running the fact-checking service, because I definitely would like to know the actual legitimacy of it. So it's run by a mayor. Or it's run by a Democrat. Orlando's run by a Democrat. Look, almost all the big cities are run by Democrats, dude. So these are older people in Florida, a lot of them, not all of them. So they tried to lock down, and then it got hot, and then they went inside because it's hot, and then they were inside where the COVID's spreading around. And so had they not locked down, they would not be seeing another spike, because the spike is because COVID is a lot like a fire. There's fuel to burn. If there's fuel to burn, it will burn that fuel. You can attempt to try to stop the fire, but it requires a lot of fire retardant. All we have are leftist retardeds. Then we have Texas, and then they are spiking. And it goes way up. And wait, I must clarify, because there's going to be somebody that says, oh, he just said the R word, because you can't compare a retarded person to a normal person, because to them that would be hateful. In my opinion, people to compare me to normal people. Oh no, did that? Oh. So that was the USB devices re-enumerating on my computer. I don't know if we lost anything. It looks like the mic is still going. I'm not 100%. Let me do a plug for funding right now. Okay, so if you're going to donate to this show, you would do it at realsimplenews.net. I do not have that website set up. If you want to make a contribution to this show so that we can buy more reliable equipment, because I am funding this show myself because I'm forced to, because no one speaks for me. They're coming for everyone else, and they're coming for me next. So I have to speak for us, because other people do not have the knowledge and the ability to speak or a platform. And so I've built this for us. You can make a donation at cookingwithkale.org/projects, where you can find links to my open source cookbooks. I have an open source CO2 sequestration machine that might be the world's most efficient water heater. Probably going to be in your house pretty soon. It extracts heat from the groundwater, gives you free hot water, uses a biomimicked ice lung. basically a swamp cooler with ice water condensate in it, or pure H2O, basically. I'm calling it water condensate because we condensate the water, and when you do that, it pulls CO2 out of the air, and just basically use like a swamp cooler, pull the air through. Well, there's a thing getting the heat out of your windows. It's like a heat pump, puts the heat back in your house, takes the heat out of the water, and then we use this ice lung, and then the ice lung pulls the CO2 out of the air, and it allows you to breathe the CO2 from the air into a grow tent where it can be converted into biomass. And this is all in the process of reclaiming waste heat from your house. It can knock your house off the grid. It's not fishy either. It's honestly, it's a souped up ice machine. I made it for free because I care about global warming. If there's a patent on it, anything is patentable, I'm taking it. It's my intellectual property, but anybody's allowed to use it. We just ask that you donate back any contributions, any improvements, so we can help share them with other people in places where this can really make their lives a better place. Cooking with Kale is a nonprofit organization. So there's the COVID one. In this next article from the Daily Mail, ex-Minneapolis police officer Tao files to have charges dismissed. Lawyers for fired Minneapolis police officer Tao filed a motion on Wednesday to dismiss 2 felony charges against. Oh shoot! I thought it said that he already got dismissed. So Tao is saying that filed a motion to dismiss 2 felony charges against him in the death of George Floyd. Tao is one of 4 police officers at the scene. He was filmed by cell phone video, keeping bystanders at bay as white cop Derek Chauvin pressed his knee on Floyd's neck, because they have to say white cop. Tao, 34, was charged with 1 count of aiding and abetting unintentional second-degree murder and aiding and abetting second-degree murder manslaughter. Tao's lawyers argue the county prosecutors have failed to show Tao knew that Derek Chauvin and the other officers were going to commit a crime. Tao's motion for dismissal will be heard on September 11th. So I made an error. They're going to approve it. The reason for that is that George Floyd died of a heart attack in the ambulance. So in order for them to convict the police officers of a crime, the police officers had to have thought that there was a crime happening. If they didn't think there was a crime happening, they're obviously not guilty of a crime because they have prosecutorial immunity. So this whole Floyd thing is an epitome of fake news, and why mob justice is bad, because typically people don't get all the facts. They hear some of the details. They do not hear all of them. And when they do this, you get a violent mob of very angry people that are looting, rioting, murdering, and they will come for you next. If they learn that they can get everything that they want through that tactic, you would be a fool to think that they would not continue to use that tactic until they get everything they want. Because that's typically what people do. In this next article from the New York Post, Maryland woman sentenced for 27 dead dogs found in a chamber of horrors. A Maryland woman whose rented home was found with 27 dead dogs inside has been sentenced to 7 years in prison by a judge who ripped the residence this week as a, quote, chambers of horrors, and, quote, they use double quotes, which, please stop using double quotes. When I'm up here and I'm going to read your thing, I don't want to say double quote, chambers of horrors, and double quote. You use a double quote inside of a single quote. It starts out as a single quote because I say, quote, chamber of horrors, end quote. And if there's another quote inside of that, I would say, quote chambers, double quote of horrors, and a double quote, end quote. I'm a computer programmer, so I will call you on that one. So let's see. I don't really want to show any pictures that are gruesome here. So I'm going to move on to the next story because it definitely looks as though she is very ashamed. That sucks. She was a hoarder. This was destroyed her life. Laura Filler, 56. She's got her picture up on here. But if you're watching, don't be depressed. It's over. You know, somebody helped pull you out of it. Now you can move on. You can make your life better again. You can return whole. You can return better. You can build back better. In this next article from the Daily Mail, son 88 of slave born on Virginia plantation is inspired by Black Lives Matter. This is clickbait. See, he born on a plantation, son of a slave born on a plantation during the Civil Rights War, during the Civil War, fears Trump presidency is pushing nation towards slavery almost to the point where it could happen. All right. So slavery. Let's pull out that phone here, made by Samsung. How many Asians jumped off the top of a building to bring me my phone? How many? What was the price on my Samsung phone to replace the nets to prevent the Asians from jumping off the top of the buildings? This phone came from China, which is controlled by the Chinese Nazi Party, which has millions of Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps. They have hundreds of millions of impoverished Chinese out in the countryside that they utilize for slave labor. They subsidize their products they're selling to us in order to take out our manufacturing. And in order to do that, they have to use slave labor. And all of you black people are purchasing stuff made by slave labor on a daily basis. And none of you are saying a single damn thing about it. Had the white people not owned slaves, none of you African Americans would be here. Almost none. It would be a completely white country. And since you're 13% of the United States of America, what is the GDP of America? First off, you would not have existed had slavery not happened. So despite the evils, there were some benefits they were life and death benefits to African Americans. The US economy has a GDP of 21.428 trillion. So let's say they got 50% of what the white people got. What is it? Let's say they do 2/3 because that was the number I heard last. Let's just say they make 50 cents on a dollar. That's 13.3% divided by 2, divided by 100. And then you times that by 21.428 trillion. And then your total extra money that you would have had, because you would have had nothing before, now you get $1.42 trillion per year. And I'm pretty sure, how many slaves were there in the U.S.? There were about 12.5 million Africans shipped to the New World, according to PBS. All right, so there's 12.5. Probably multiple generations. Let's multiply that by 10. Let's say there's 100 million. Well, let's say there are 30, 40 million. I bet you there's 30 or 40 million people in the world who would be a slave to come to the U.S. In fact, actually, migrants regularly work as slaves in order to gain entry to other countries. Today, they still do that. All you black people are taking advantage of their slave labor, and none of you are saying anything about it. None of you. You're a hypocrite. You're a wolf caller. Call wolf. Oh, no, this is racism. And then you look at the hate map level over here. Do we have the level? They won't tell you the level because the hate level is 1 here at SPLC. It's the lowest it can get. You're in a country where people love black people. And so this guy, what is this guy saying again? So he said his father, Abraham Smith, was born on a plantation in Messilles, Middle Virginia in 1862 during the Civil War. Abraham was 70 years old by the time his son was born in 1932 in Connecticut. Like his father, Smith has lived through decades of African-American racial history. While he has always considered the 150 years since his father's birth a solid gap in history, he said it now seemed much shorter given the current events. He implied that the years were slipping back towards the times of slavery, almost to the point where it can happen again. Smith implied that feeling he had briefly disappeared after the protests took the streets across the country in support of BLM. So this gets to the heart of the matter. It's always been about Trump. Always been about the Trump presidency. It's never been about black lives. If it was, we'd be legalizing drugs and getting the Democrats out of control of these cities that they are running into the ground, where you have homeless people banging cartel dope, taking shits next to ivory towers, where you can get cholera, hep C, typhoid fever, what are they? HIV. Well, you can get like, what's that one with the bloodborne one? Hepatitis C. You can get the plague. You can get TB, and you can get COVID next to a bum banging dope next to an ivory tower when you step in his pile of shit that has a hypodermic needle in it. And that hypodermic needle was paid for by Democrats. Boy, these heroin addicts, man, they are hardcore Democrats, man. I've been chatting with people on the internet and people that I've known in past day that were started doing heroin. Man, they're all hardcore Democrats, man. Woo! All the gangbangers up in the city that murder people, sell people fentanyl, heroin, meth. They all are hating on Donald Trump. So when this stuff gets out of control, you can pretty much guarantee these gangbangers are going to start murdering mass amounts of people. When the gangbangers get power, they're going to murder and rob people. That's what gangbangers do. So when you give these people everything they want, and if you don't, then they'll come riot, loot, burn your city down, kill you, and burn your house down with your family in it, like the gangbanger from Atlanta threatened to do to me because he thought I stole from him. Then everything's going to sound like racism. When all you and y'all friends sit around and talk about racism all day, everything's going to sound like racism because people are giving you social benefits for you complaining about racism. You talk about racism, then people like lower the bar to give you a job. And you say, oh, the white man's holding me down because like he Said my GPA ain't good enough. So that means he's racist. So that means we got to replace him. We got to target the white man, attack them, take their white privilege because they racist. They support Donald Trump. So that means they a fascist. So that means to them it's okay to kill a fascist because Americans kill fascists. Actually, let me correct you on that. Americans are peaceful people that don't just kill fascists. We enforce law and order to make the world a better place. We bring democracy. And so when feminists push for equality movements like they did in the women's suffrage movement in Germany, and then they get their voting rights, and then they vote for fascism because they didn't know much about politics. And then whenever they got into politics, they started hating people and picking bad politicians, just like the Democrats are doing. When you start engaging in these behaviors, you end up repeating elements of human behavior, elements of human nature that cause genocides. So I don't know what kind of oppression this dude has ever experienced in his life, but I would like to implore him. You should be held hostage by a serial killing gangbanger. You should have him put you in a closet in an RV like he did to me, where you think you're going to be murdered, and then he pulls you out of a closet with an assault rifle, and a pregnant woman pulls out a pistol, and then they're yelling at each other, threatening to kill each other, and you're just an innocent person that's in that situation. You didn't do anything. My right to my life is way more important than your ability to break the law without having police interactions. When you, as a gangbanger, go out and murder, rob, torture, steal, you make it really hard for the rest of the black people and the rest of the people who look like hip hoppers, because everybody else starts to think that they're gangsters. They don't want to come near them because if you do, there's a chance you might get killed in a home invasion robbery. I've fallen victim to 2 home invasion robberies in Eugene, Oregon, where there's hardly any black people. And both times it was a white person and a black dude. Now, of course, black people don't all engage in this behavior, but hip hop people are notorious for engaging in these kinds of behaviors, and black people tend to like hip hop. 92% of people are Democrats. Democrats owned slaves, started the KKK, opposed women's suffrage. They passed the 1994 crime bill that started the police industrial complex and started putting black people in jail. And then they were being used for slave labor in the prisons. And so when you talk about slavery and slavery returning to the United States, you should really point the finger at where the slavery is coming from, and it's from Democrats. Because people running big cities, people in big cities can be hella fucked up. In World War II, the fascists and the communists were both people from the big cities who took over the countryside. Nazis took over France, which was a largely rural community at the time. Communists took over the rural areas of Russia. The people in the cities wanted socialism. The people in the countryside wanted capitalism. Reason for this is because the system works better when you have a lot of people together and you get a bunch of poor people. Then socialism might seem like a good answer, but it's not. The best way to deal with things is the same way that human nature deals with them, which is through capitalism, through private ownership, through competition. Does not happen through lowering the bar, through the elimination of standards, through biasing it towards minorities, because when you have minorities in control, it's called authoritarianism. If the majority of people rule, that would be called democracy. The majority of people in the United States are white. So therefore, if black people control America, that would be called a authoritarian dictatorship. The way these people think is they think that you should have 50% black candidates, 50% Latino candidates, 50% Asian candidates, and 50% women. And, well, it doesn't really take a genius to tell you that those numbers don't add up to 1. But most Democrats aren't very good with math, so to them, it's all the same. But when we continue to hark on racism and make white people seem evil, what you do is you get people all worked up, you get them angry, and then they start thinking that these people wronged you, and then they think that they stole from you. And like the gangbanger from Atlanta, the serial killer that almost killed me, he thought that I stole from him, and he turned into a serial killer. And this is the same thing that the left is doing. So if you want to talk about slavery, why don't we talk about the chain gangs from the people who got caught selling drugs. Now in the chain gangs getting used for, well, I guess they're not all chain gangs, getting used for slave labor. How many more do we got? We're getting towards the end. We have one more, right. 2 more. This next one's from Newsweek. It says 4 students arrested in Hong Kong under new national security law. 4 students were arrested on Wednesday in Hong Kong after the city's new national security law went into effect on July 1st. According to the South China Morning Post, the 4 students were members of a pro-independence group who recently announced its mission to turn Hong Kong into a republic. I implore you, people of Hong Kong, you should overthrow the dictator Winnie the Pooh and bring democracy to China, because they would love it. Because once they kind of switched over to a hybrid system between capitalism and socialism, then it became Nazism. Reading on in the article, it says, during the recent press conference, Li Kwai-wah, senior superintendent of the Department of Safeguarding National Security under the city's police force, stated that the suspects group recently announced the establishment of a body to build Republic of Hong Kong and encourage pro-independent political ideals, according to the Post. The arrest of the suspects, who've been between the ages of 16 and 21, occurred in the territories of Lunyang, Sha Tin, and Tien Mun. Police in Hong Kong did not reveal the identities of the 4 students, but noted that they were arrested on suspicion of organizing and inciting secession. And if you're very interested, I am, in fact, myself organizing and inciting secession of Hong Kong from the evil dictator Winnie the Pooh. So if I go to China, I am going to go to jail, because the national security law is extraterritorial. It means that in the United States, if you tell people that in Hong Kong that they should overthrow the dictator Winnie the Pooh and bring democracy to Hong Kong, that they should be independent, now you are now guilty of organizing and inciting secession, like I am. I'm pleading guilty right now. If you're listening, Winnie the Pooh, I think you're kind of overweight. And you're kind of an asshole. And you definitely look like Winnie the Pooh. We got one more story here, then I'm out. This last story from Newsweek says U.S. surpassed 150,000 coronavirus deaths as state set new fatality records. More than 150,000 people have died from health complications caused by COVID. Wednesday's number approached original fatality projections estimated near the beginning of the nation's outbreak. And they hit the fatality record in California. I can go too far into it. But the state run by the Democrats that tried to lock down and instigate all of these harsh measures had the highest number of fatalities. A fatality record. And that is because when Democrats play God, it tends to end up with your family being dead. And I said there was one more, but there actually is one more. This is from the Daily Mail. It says lockdowns caused up to 21,000 extra deaths many due to the reduced access to healthcare. This is in the UK. Almost 2,700 extra people died during the 8 weeks after lockdown measures were put into place. A new study has found, and I figured this out myself the other day on Real Simple News, so I've already covered that. But the moral of the story is everywhere around the world, they're all experiencing the same thing. They're saying these lockdowns aren't working. The measures are draconian. They're causing leftists to go nuts. And it's threatening our democracy. And this is the reason why you're not supposed to censor people's speech for what you call hate speech or misinformation, because the reality of the situation is, even if I had given you the right information, chances are your memory would be very bad, and later on you would get the details wrong, which is what I do sometimes. I am not perfect. This is why we create WikiSpy with a fact-checking service that allows for fact-checking independently to make it so that we can all come to the conclusion independently, because even the world's most smartest experts, they're still going to have errors. Everybody has errors. We're humans. We pick people to be in positions because they typically have the lowest rates of errors. So with that, I'm signing out. Thank you for watching Real Simple News on Thursday, July 30th, 2020. Again, I'm your host, Kale McCullough, captain of the Kabuki Starship. Thank you very much for watching Real Simple News. And as I say every time, farewell, aloha, sayonara, peace be with you, and Godspeed in your journeys.